previewing week 6 of college football and what 2025 NFL draft prospects need to make a statement. Stanford wide receiver Elic Ayomanor. We're going to talk about him and Jackson Dart and plenty others coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and everyday shot for being our everydays. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at The Talent Code. Can you talk to him, baby?
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, on the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we bring you championship level content each and every single podcast. Listen, man, I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day, man. Every listen is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft DP. We are in week 6 already. We halfway there, and I'm kind of sad, right? I want to get to the good games, but I'm kind of sad, DP, because we're already halfway there, and we're going to do our classic week preview. We're going to talk about make a statement, right? Which guys need to show up and make a statement. We're going to talk about a couple of those second-tier prospects that can help their team win some games, and then we're going to talk about a couple of sleeper guys to keep your eyes on that can have some big-time performances in week 6. DP, I'm ready to talk some football, man. Let's get into it.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Make a statement, Keith. And my make a statement player of week 6, I have to go to Stanford wide receiver Elic Ayomanor. And I think, Keith, we talked about, you got Vatek, and I think the reason why for me I need him to make a statement, Vatek's defense, if they are able to build upon the performance we saw last Friday against Miami, this could be a tough matchup for that offense, especially because of the quarterback situation at Stanford. I need Elic to go out here, and we're watching just a lot of great plays from receivers, whether it's Toy McMillan, Luther Burden, Travis Hunter, Trey Harris at Ole Miss. Elic is one of the best receivers in college football, right? And I know the quality of targets isn't the greatest, but I still think that he can go out here and make enough plays, because at the end of the day, I personally feel like he's a late first-round caliber talent. I think he's a late first-round caliber wide receiver. The production for those who box score scout, which I would advise no one to do, but there are people that do it, Keith. If you're going to box score scout in terms of, okay, well, is he worth me watching? He doesn't have 300 yards in the season right now, right? I think he's got like 284 or something like that through like 3 or 4 games. But still, yet for me, he needs to make a statement. Vatek has their corners. If I remember from watching the tape, their corners look long. They look tall with long arms, long legs. They want to disrupt you. They want to be able to run with you, play physical at the line of scrimmage. And to me, when I look at Elic, that's kind of his jam. That's kind of his game. Like, you want to get hands on, I'm cool with that. We can dance with that. And I think for Elic, this is the opportunity for him to go out here and really prove just how good he is.
Yeah, no, that's going to be interesting, DP, because like you're talking about just the wide receiver position and looking for guys to emerge, right, and like who's going to, solidify themselves or put themselves in an upper echelon of potential backing in the first round. And listen, because we just know this draft class is not panning out to be, an all-timer, right? It's not necessarily a barn burner as far as what it's looking like at the very top. So that means guys have opportunity to elevate themselves. DP, I'm going to go with, seems like we pick on this guy. I'm not picking on him. It's just a big-time matchup, and it's very pivotal. I'm going to go with Jackson Dart, quarterback from Ole Miss, just lost to Kentucky. It wasn't the first Power 4, right, challenge, but I think like the first highly leveraged challenge, right, against SEC Kentucky. And Ole Miss didn't play well, right? And we talked about big-time moments. Big-time players make big-time plays and big-time moments. Well, guess what? Now you have to travel to South Carolina with that defensive front. And in order for you to win that game, it's going to take Jackson Dart making plays, right? Because your offensive line is probably not going to match up great against that defensive line. But when you talk about being he's a first round quarterback, he's a top 100 player, XYZ, that's what top 100 players do. They have to make plays. And I know that South Carolina, that fan base, right? They're ready to get after it. They had LSU on the ropes, and they were probably, to be completely honest, they were a healthy quarterback away from winning that game. And if you look at it, they like, hey, this is our next time. Knock off a top 15 opponent. And then the other side of why this is so important, this has playoff implications, DP, because Ole Miss, if I had to ask, right, you think about the playoffs and in this 12-team bracket, right? Alabama looks like a playoff team. Georgia's second half looked like a playoff team, right? Texas looks like a playoff team. So that's 3. Now, who is that next team up? It's Ole Miss, LSU, somewhere in there, right? One of those 2 teams. And Ole Miss, you can't have 2 losses this early and expect to get into the playoffs, right? Especially against Kentucky and South Carolina, which we don't believe either one of those teams are going to make the SEC championship. And then they follow next week up, DP, playing at LSU, I believe. So this is a big time game, right? Like, and that's why I say it's not a matter of picking on Jackson Dart. It's just there's a lot of implications here, right? It's one big time when it's one situation.
No, I mean, you think about the Kentucky game. That was a game. Now, when you look at the schedule, you couldn't have lost that game.
You shouldn't have lost that one. Nope.
You should not have lost that game.
You still got to play Bama, I believe. You still have to play Bama. You got to play LSU. So, yeah.
So it's like, okay, if you don't show up, and there's some people that had Jackson Dart in the QB1 discussion, like this entire season, because of the numbers he was putting up against inferior competition. And for me, it's like that game last week, you had the opportunity, final drive, like you could have won that game. You could have made the right plays, and you didn't, right? You didn't close that out. Now you're going up against a tough and physical South Carolina defense, who, by the way, they're coming off of a bye week. So they had 2 weeks to prepare for you. If you don't think that Shane Beamer and those coaches didn't have his team watching the tape, especially the Kentucky game, how did they disrupt you? How did they get into your head? How did they throw you off your rhythm? Okay, then you're guessing wrong. They're going to be prepared for you. And then when you have Lenore Sellers, Raheem Sanders, their run game, they have speed and athleticism at wide receiver, and I think at tight end, this could be and this game is on the road for Ole Miss. 3:30.
Yeah, as I said, it's South Carolina. We seen what it looked like for LSU, right? And South Carolina came out swinging haymakers. And not only did the quarterback get hurt, 2 pick sixes got called back, 2 of them, right? That was 14 points and a quarterback. That game was ugly early on. And I think the biggest matchup, like I said, DP, is the running backs, South Carolina, right? That's the wide receivers. The biggest thing is that South Carolina has a defensive line. Like, they have one of the better defensive lines in the entire in college football. You got the freshmen coming off the edge, but they have the 2 veteran guys with TJ Saunders and Tonka Hemingway, right? So, and I forgot there's one other guy that's emerging too, that's playing really good football. So that's the biggest question mark, right? Is what's going to happen up front, and I think is going to force like I said, force Jackson Dart to have to make plays. So that's why he's my make a statement guy. If you're not making a statement for the first round, make a statement that I'm a top 100 prospect. Make a statement that I can win some games. Make a statement that this is not the same Ole Miss of the past where we're good. We're just not great, right? We're good.
Got to show up in big moments, man. He's not done that his whole career.
Yep, has to show up, man. He has to show up. But DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing, because I know there's a lot more prospects that we want to talk about, man. We wrapped up. Make a statement. What are we talking about now? Those second tier guys, right, to keep your eyes on, because they will be the reason why their team wins on Saturday. So we're going to talk about that coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Guys, download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use the code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Second tier prospect, Keith, to watch on Saturday. I have to go to Clemson, and I got to talk about my guy, Phil Maffa. I got a text from a scout, one of my guys, who was also a listener of the show. He always taps in with me. So, man, like, if he listens to the show, he's like, hey, check out these guys. Like, you know what I mean? So shout out to my boy. But he texted me. He said, listen, I can't confirm it yet because I got to go back and watch Phil, like, entirely. But he said, this is the comp I have for Phil Maffa, Le'Veon Bell. He's like, I can't get it out of my head. I can't shake it. He said he reminds me so much of Lev Bell. And I was like, yo, that's a comp. I was like, I like it. I was like, I got to check it out to confirm how I feel about it, but I'm gonna check it out. And right now on the season, Phil Maffa, Clemson running back, 6'1", 230, and excuse me, 43 carries through 4 weeks, 342 yards rushing, averaging 8 yards per rush, 2 rushing touchdowns. I want to see them get him more involved in the actual passing game because he is a solid pass catcher. He worked on that like heavily last offseason in 2023. They're going into Florida State, Keith, and Florida State's defense has not been great. They've given up a lot in the run game. I think this is a great opportunity for them to lean on Phil Maffa, let him set the tone early in this game, give him his touches and his carries between the tackles, and just kind of test that mental and physical fortitude of this Florida State defense. Like, okay, like that first couple carries on that scripted drive, let's see how they're attacking. Like, are they trying to hit you? Right, because then that as a running back, I can tell you, whenever you ran against defenses that you just knew, like, yeah, he didn't really try to strike me just now. Like, you're not here today because I'm here. So if you're not here, that's fine. I like that. That makes you want to run. That's gonna make him run harder, and he's gonna feel like I'm in their head already. They didn't come to this game ready to play. And I think for them, that also gets Cade Klubnik going because then once you get Phil Maffa going, then you get to read the kind of zone read, the QB keeper, reading the backside end. You let that, the athletic quarterback get out in the open field. Like we talked about two episodes ago, Keith, it gets Cade Klubnik settled. It get him like going, right? When he can get the positive plays going. It also opens up the passing attack. So I think Phil Maffa is one of those second-tier prospects that I'm really keying in on. I want them to run the ball early in this game and test that Florida State defensive line has a lot of NFL talent on it, but they haven't played up to par yet.
Yeah, and it should be interesting, right? Just to see how that plays out. And I know that's why you highlight him, right? Because that's going to be a key part of this entire game, like you said, against Florida State. DP, I'm going to go with, and this is not a second-tier prospect, right? But a rather a guy that we have to pay attention to, and that's Omarion Hampton. Slowly, but like under the radar, I'll say that. Under the radar, he's been having a really productive season. I think he's at almost 700 yards rushing right now through 5 weeks, and then he has another 100 yards receiving. And they have I think it's a good matchup. Well, I want to say they're playing Duke this week, I believe. So Pittsburgh, I'm sorry, it's Pittsburgh. They're playing Pitt, and that's a good matchup, right? And you talk about the reason I'm highlighting him is because you're talking about directly correlating wins to him, but then also, right, they can have conference championship implications because, just talking about the ACC and where it stands now. Could North Carolina put themselves in that bucket, right? Miami just had a close contest against Virginia Tech, right? Clemson has a loss against Georgia, right? Like, so if North Carolina, if Omarion Hampton can be the real deal, then hey, they can make something shake. They have 2 losses right now, but if they can try to build momentum, run the table, and Pittsburgh is one of those, they're the Utahs, right? Just those type of scrappy teams that they usually just play tough, right? And it's just like, why are y'all good again, right? Like nobody's talking about y'all, but then somehow y'all sitting there at like 6-2 through 8 weeks or something like that. And so we have to look at this Pittsburgh team, look at this matchup, and look at Omarion Hampton as a prospect that has a lot on his shoulders to be able to carry this North Carolina team to a win because he's being productive as a running back, 700 yards, rushing another 100, receiving the football. He's being productive.
No, 100%, Keith. I mean, and he's doing it up until the last 2 weeks. Like they had very inconsistent QB play. Like Jacoby Criswell has been able to throw the ball and attack deep down the field and different things like that because he's kind of a big arm mobile quarterback. But yeah, it's been the Omari and Hampton show pretty much all season. And he's we're big fans of his game on this show. And on this podcast, I gotta go to Iowa defensively. One of my guys from this summer, Sebastian Castro,
yes, sir.
Second tier, a guy that could have been a make a statement player for me this weekend as well. Because I look at him, and this season, he's been solid. He's been pretty solid this season. Been targeted 20 times. He's plays predominantly in the nickel hybrid safety. He's allowed 15 catches. He's got he's allowed 113 yards receiving. But this coming off of a game where he allowed 2 touchdowns against Minnesota. And for him just kind of bouncing back from that, he's a good player, you know what I mean? And a guy that he's a little bit older, so I expect him to be more of a day 2 pick, and the testing is going to be a big thing. Talk to a scout that they have some concerns about like his overall like vertical speed and everything, but like we know he's one of the toughest players, one of the heaviest hitters. He's a +1 in the run game. He can cover man to man and in zone, and he plays with good instincts. And I'm just keeping my eye on him this week as well because I just want to see him. Like I said, I want to see him bounce back. This is a great opportunity for him and everything. And yeah, I think that they have Ohio State. Like,
they play Ohio State. They play Ohio State. That's a big time matchup because he's gonna have to get involved in the run game and the passing game, right? And then Will Howard, I think this is to be the first time he'll really be tested. So are they going to use his legs? How he's going to opt to use his legs? It's going to be interesting. I was going to ask you about
Jeremiah Smith in the slot potentially. That's
the running backs. You're going to have to tackle, right? You're going to have to tackle.
For sure.
I wanted to ask you, how much does he remind you of? I'm thinking of the safety. He plays for the Eagles now. Brown. I know it was Sidney. I think Sidney Brown. Is it Sidney Brown?
Oh, yeah. Yes, because that's Chase Brown's like twin brother.
Twin brothers. Yep.
He actually reminds me a good deal of him. I think Sidney was a more explosive athlete, but like remember we watched watching the tape of Sidney Brown versus Sam Laporta.
Yeah.
Like he reminds me of Sidney, where Sidney was that physical box player. And, playing in the nickel, he could cover, he could blitz, he can defend the run, he could do literally everything. I'm talking about wearing multiple hats, but then he was also a high-level athlete as well. And then you could play him and feel comfortable playing him a lot deep, even if he was like single high. Where I look at Sebastian, I think if Sebastian plays high, it's going to be in 2 high shells, where you got another safety back there with him. He's only got a limited range to have to cover and stuff like that. But no, I never thought about that, but that's a good comp, Keith. Sidney Brown to Sebastian Castro. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and DP, I'm looking at more of these matchups, right? And I'm looking at the SC at Minnesota, right, which could be an interesting game. And you talk about Miller Moss, right? And what he's going to do? He played fairly well. Watching him, he played solid football against Wisconsin, right? So the thing was like, how is USC going to handle the physicality, right, of the Big Ten? And the Michigan game, that was the Michigan game, right? But against Wisconsin, they handled it fairly well, and it wasn't a game that just went smooth, right? They had a couple hiccups. I believe they had a turnover or 2 or something like that, and then they had to kind of just overcome it. But Miller Moss, I think that he's playing some of the most steady football of any quarterback, right? And I think he's elevating his draft stock through that because we are far away from Jackson Dart and Connor Wegman being QB1s. Remember that? Like, it's just crazy how this stuff unfolds, right?
That's why we play the games, Keith. That is why we play the games right there. Like, to answer some of these questions, man. One more second-tier prospect, Keith. Crazy enough, we haven't really talked about him at all this season. Donovan, I want to make sure I say this correctly or get as close as possible. Eza Rauku, edge rusher from Boston College, 6'2", 247. Keith, he has a forced fumble. He has 8 sacks on the season. He's coming off a game against Florida State where he had 2 more sacks not Florida State. He had 3 sacks last week against Western Kentucky and a forced fumble in that game. He had 14 total tackles, 3 sacks. He had an incredible stat line. This dude is explosive. He's got bend. I believe it was Jim Nagy, our guy Jim Nagy from the Senior Bowl. I think Jim said he has over 34-inch arms as well. So, yeah, like when you think about like just those kind of second-tier edge rushers, as we talked about, right? Some of the top guys, Now Abdul Carter's getting going, and James Pierce is finding his way, stuff like that. But some of the second tier and even sleeper guys that no one talked about as edge rushers, those guys have been elevating their game. And Donovan for Boston College, man, he's got a game against Virginia. I wouldn't be surprised if he walks out of there with 2 more sacks as well.
Hey, let's see. Let's check it out, right? DP, let's keep this thing going and flowing. And what are we wrapping up with? The sleeper guys, right? The guys nobody's talking about. DP, I'm pretty sure he's going to get his alarm clock. He's going to wake them up. And we're going to talk about those guys that can make an impact this upcoming weekend. Let's get into it, DP. Coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get that urge or you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same exact page where you place your bets. And guys, you know I've talked about FanDuel Sportsbook so much on this podcast, from preseason betting odds, but guess what? You can get in on live betting odd action as the odds shift and change each and every time during the season because games are being played now. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. When you place your first $5 bet, you will get started with $200 back in bonus bets guaranteed. All you need to do is go to FanDuel.com and get in on the action. Go to FanDuel.com and get in on the action. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Guys, it's time to hit the alarm clock and wake up on some sleeper prospects for the 2024 NFL Draft, 2025 NFL Draft class heading into week 6 of college football. Keith, I'm going to a game that I think it could be a good one. And that's it's Arkansas. I believe they're at home. Yeah, I think they are at home.
Yeah.
Arkansas and their wide receiver, like I talked about Taylor Green, the quarterback, 6'6", 230, Jaquindon Jackson. We talked about him in the season he's having this year. He's played some good football. They got a wide receiver, Keith, that I think no one really knows about, and that's Isaac Tesla. And no, he has nothing to do with the actual Tesla car. Like, you know what I mean? Yes, they are at home this Saturday, tomorrow. The night game hosting Tennessee, number 4 ranked Tennessee. I think Tesla is 6'4", 217, almost 220, and he's coming off his best game of the season. And this is what I wanted to see from him: 5 catches, 120 yards receiving, and a touchdown. He had a 75-yard catch in this game. This young man has ball skills. He's got strong hands. He can move and stretch the vertical plane, can play at the catch point as well. And I think if I'm the head coach, I think Sam Pittman is their head coach. I'm telling my OC, let's get Tesla going, right? Let's press the button. Let's get him charged up and let's get him going in this passing game, because I think he's probably their best playmaker at the wide receiver position. And don't get me wrong, I do like the couple of other guys that they do have. Andrew Armstrong. I don't believe he's also another guy, 6'4", 202. They got some big body guys over there. They got 6'7" Tyrone Broden and everything. And then they have the 5'11" sophomore Isaiah Sintega. But I think they need to get Tesla going in this game, Keith, because I think if you can do that and create those big explosive plays down the field, outside the numbers, it's going to help your run game, help your quarterback, and really just because I think Green has been eyeing too much on Armstrong from the games I watched. Let's get the rest of your guys going. Let's spread the ball around, make defenses play you honest, and let's help get him into a rhythm. When you got a 6'4", 220-pound wide receiver, you kind of want to get him the football and let him make some plays.
Yeah, DP, I want to put somebody, and if you watch the Georgia-Bama game, he's probably on people's radar, or they heard the name, right? But I want to tell them, like, hey, this is a solid player, right? Dylan Bell, the wide receiver for Georgia. Yes. Somebody I don't think we've discussed on the podcast, to be honest. We haven't talked about him yet. But he showed something right in that game against Georgia, and I think he's just one of those players, DP, that simply a get the job done type of guy, right? I don't know if he's gonna have 4.3 speed. He might be more of a 4.48, 4.5 guy, right? But he can play. You know what? Similar. This comp just came to me like a Jalen Pope type of guy, right? Like if you like Jalen Pope, then maybe you could appreciate some of what Dylan Bell can do. They're playing against Auburn, right? And I feel like coming off a loss, they're gonna have the hair on fire, right? And it's about this Georgia offense just kind of getting going, right? Like I think they needed that game against Bama to be like, yeah, if we continue to play ridiculous football, we're gonna get ridiculous results, right? Like they always say, right? We say in New Orleans, right? You play silly games, you get silly answers, you win silly prizes, right? At the end of the day, that's what happened. Play silly games, you win silly prizes, and that's what Georgia did. And I think they finally woke up. So I'm gonna highlight Dylan Bell as a sleeper guy to pay attention to that game against Auburn. Obviously, rivalry type situation. Them getting after SEC football, stringing together some weeks for this Georgia offense.
No, I like that call out, Keith, because Dylan Bell isn't someone that gets talked about a lot. And I think he had a nice game in that second half against Bama. He's strong, he's physical, yards after catch type of merchant and type of guy. I want to go to my sleeper guys, and a name that I don't hear talked about much at all, but he's been playing good football over at Cal, and they have a big game with Miami going to Cal. This is a 10:30 Eastern game. This is a late night game in the ACC. And that's cornerback Noel Williams, 6'1", 200 yards. Keith, his numbers have been outstanding. He's been targeted 24 times. He's only allowed 10 receptions in 4 games. He's combined 138 yards receiving. He's allowed 0 touchdowns in coverage. He has 2 pass breakups, but 4 interceptions. And this is a guy that I expect to see a multitude of receivers. He's not going to face Xavier Restrepo because he plays in the slot. He's going to see Jacoby George, our guy Samuel Brown, that transfer from Houston. And I think this is a guy, especially with the way that Cam Ward likes to play quarterback. He said it, I'm a gunslinger, and I can see him testing the throws outside. And coming off a game where he had 2 interceptions, I know I'm pretty sure Noel Williams is sitting there just kind of rubbing his hands, licking his chops like, okay, if you're going to test me, I'm going to go ahead and make a play. I've made plays all season on the football. Please test me so I can make some more plays on this game. This is an opportunity for him, because I think we've talked about it a couple of times. This is a resume game for Noel Williams. This is how you put yourself on the map. He's eligible. I think he's a 5th-year senior. Played 3 years at UNLV, the last 2 at Cal. When you think about Cal, you think about more offense, Jade, not the run game. Noel Williams, keep your eyes on him this weekend.
With DP. That wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Listen, man, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today, and Everyday Shot for being our everydayers. Guys, enjoy college football, NFL on Sunday, and then come and join us again on Monday on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.